Today's conversation is on Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. This book was brought to my awareness back in 2013. We've been discussing books that have been very helpful to building 3 successful businesses, actualizing harmonious relationships, and communication skills. This has been another book that was very helpful for me. Now, this book came across my awareness, as mentioned, in 2013. Around that time, I was transitioning from my IT business, moving into consulting, and also I started this YouTube channel. Now, it turns out that my ex-girlfriend at the time was a member of Self-Realization Fellowship, which is the organization of Yogananda. So she was the one who introduced me to this book. I later found out that it was the book that Steve Jobs would read every year. Apparently, it was the only book that he kept on his iPad and iPhone from some of my sources. And he would read it every year. So this was inspiring to me as well, because when I was building my IT business, I would listen to the Steve Jobs commencement speech over and over again. Some of the things that he mentioned to me that were very helpful were follow your heart and intuition. Everything else is secondary. And not letting the noise of other people's opinions drown out your inner voice. Now, after reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi, this added more dimension to what he was suggesting. So what ended up happening then is I started to value meditation more so. I started to value intuition more so. And I started to value discerning between mental chatter and the inner voice. Now, Yogananda describes self-realization as the knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul that you are now in possession of the kingdom of God. I was raised Catholic, so in the Bible it states that the kingdom of heaven is within you. So he dimensionalized it further by suggesting that body, mind, and soul can be integrated into a whole experience, which I relate to nowadays as being in flow. Now, I like to segment it and say self-realization, self-actualization, and self-transcendence. Yet this is my way of communicating what he's pointing to here. Integration. Self-realization being knowing thyself to be transcendent to perceived limitations in mind. They only appear in mind, so that we can release those perceived limitations, so then we can have an actualization of ourself through the outer experiences of life. And by that I mean, practically speaking, the self can be actualized as harmonious relationships, harmonious business, harmonious friendships, harmonious way of being, or we could say authentic way of being. You go within and you discover via intuition how you truly desire to live. So as mentioned, I see that as self-actualization, actualizing thyself. And then I also speak of self-transcendence, which is to be in harmony with all. One of the things that I've realized, and this book emphasizes as well, is that by being as you are, by realizing yourself and actualizing yourself, it automatically, naturally plays out as people, environment, circumstance, and information being in harmony with you. So when he suggested, and this wasn't from the book, but he had mentioned this, self-realization is knowing in all parts of the body, mind, and soul that you are now in possession of the kingdom of God. This is a very integrated experience, a real integrated experience of inner and outer experience as one. One of the aspects that I very much enjoyed that Yogananda would teach was the integration of spiritual living in practical everyday life. So he would suggest that you can integrate the teachings of the West with the teachings of the East. They were integratable and actually can be harmoniously related to each other in a way that you live authentically, as per his description here of all parts of body, mind, and soul being experienced as one in possession of the kingdom of God. Now, as mentioned, there were many benefits to listening to the Steve Jobs commencement speech. And Yogananda would emphasize the importance of meditation. He said in the book, meditation is the process of reuniting the soul with the infinite spirit. Now, what I found is through my meditation practice, which is a Vipassanā meditation practice. I do 20 minutes of Vipassanā meditation a day, sometimes more, at times twice a day. For more on Vipassanā meditation, I'll link in the description to a video, a guided Vipassanā meditation. Now, through meditation, I found that I had a deeper relationship with my true, authentic inner voice, the inner voice that guides me. I also found that it was easier to discern between the mental chatter of opinions or the mental chatter that was arising in mine from past beliefs which belong to what the Bible refers to as the old man. It became easier to discern between the voice of intuition and the mental chatter, all through the practice of meditation. So I agree when he says, from personal experience as well, that it is a process of reuniting the soul with the infinite spirit. Through this reuniting of the soul with the infinite spirit, what happens is you know clearly what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, when to take a step back, when to take a step forward. And intuition is your sure guide. I trust you've noticed this as you've been practicing what we've been discussing over the years. He also mentions that the more you meditate, the more you will be able to feel the divine presence in all people and in all conditions. So as mentioned, what happens, this has been my personal experience, through the practice of meditation, through the practice of listening to and honoring intuition and the inner voice, is I notice that people, environment, circumstance, and information appear to be in harmony with me. And I actually acknowledge the divine presence in people, in plants, in animals. This removed the illusion of separation. What I mean by that is beliefs in mind were generating the illusions of separation between myself and another person. And these illusions would play out as inharmonious conversations, conflict unnecessarily, argumentations of the intellect of trying to prove the other person wrong, which is illusory. By that I mean who we truly are is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That is our true nature. As we acknowledge the divine presence in each person, we can say then that is how we imagine them. That is how we see them. And as we see them that way, one could say we look beyond the mental chatter that suggests illusions of separation. And what we notice from thinking in that way, being in that way, and I mean integrated as mentioned, physical, emotional, mental, to the spiritual truth that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, is the conversations play out harmoniously, more so each day, with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive. And also the relationships play out that way, in a harmonious way. So one could say that not only do we witness the divine presence in each person, we also embody and experience the divine presence that we all share. And that is powerful because, practically speaking, the relationship between, let's say, the Eastern ways of mysticism and the Western ways of materialism, although I don't necessarily see it that way because I do see it in the East and West, different practices. So a harmonious relationship between spirit and matter. A harmonious relationship between spirit and matter. So we could say the individual releases identification to matter and reemerges back into matter in a harmonious way, which then plays out as wonderful life experiences, harmonious relationships, friendships, etc. In business, for example, what I noticed is more so conflicts would seem to resolve themselves, which was very interesting. I would see more so the divine presence in people. I trust you're noticing this as well. And what may have appeared as conflict before in those relationships dissolves, and what appears is harmonious conversation, harmonious relationships. So he says that the goal of yoga science is to calm the mind, that without distortion it may hear the infallible counsel of the inner voice. So again, with respect to the Steve Jobs commencement speech, follow your heart and intuition, everything else is secondary. Don't let the noise of opinions, which we can say is just past illusory programming playing out, which we can release identification to, which is mind purifying. And meditation helps with that. And why is it that I say meditation helps with that? Well, from personal experience, as I've been doing the Vipassanā meditation, what I found was that it was easier for me to focus on my breathing. So if thoughts would appear in mind that would be, let's say, distracting, or there was noises in the environment or body sensations that we could say are distracting, I would be able to bring my attention back to my breathing easier and easier. This meditation practice was very helpful for living the meditation practice in day-to-day life, because I would notice that if I was about to become identified with mental chatter or opinions in an inharmonious way, I would be able to listen to the inner voice, go within and discover the inner voice, and this inner voice would guide me as to what to say, what to do, what not to do, etc., which is powerful. Because then what happens is a person lives from conviction, from the sure foundation of authenticity, as they are realizing the self and actualizing the self, and as mentioned, the way I like to say it, transcending self as well, which simply means being in harmony with all. Now, he also talks about how he listens to the inner voice. He has mentioned a number of times in chapter 42, for example, he was mentioning that a personal experience where he was experiencing turmoil, during that personal experience, while he was experiencing turmoil, the inner voice advised him to collect yourself, be calm. I noticed this happen many times along my journey, and more so with increasing frequency as I purified the mind through meditation. And another way that I have been purifying the mind, which is what we discuss, is anytime these illusory thoughts appear in mind, I acknowledge that they are not me, as they suggest otherwise from being love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment for no reason at all. So any thoughts that suggest otherwise are illusory. I live the meditation practice by not identifying with them. And so during the meditation practice, I bring my attention back to the breathing. During day-to-day life, I bring my attention back to what I'm doing right now. So it could be this conversation we're having right here. It could be a conversation with a friend. It could be working on my tasks, my initiatives from a state of flow. I am deeply engaged with what I'm doing now, not from a place of stress, frustration, or to the point where it strains me, but rather from a state of flow. And I find that this has become the natural result through the practice of, as mentioned, meditation, by bringing my attention back to the breathing again and again and again, and also practicing not identifying with illusions of separation that appear in mind. Now, what ends up happening then is intuition is crystal clear. You can feel it in the moment. You can check in with yourself at any moment. Let's say you are about to decide something. Maybe opportunities present themselves, and you could choose opportunity A, B, C. And let's say you might not know in that moment which opportunity to choose. You can be still for a moment, go within, and receive the intuitive yes as to which opportunity is authentic for you. Now, what I found is you can also have a conversation with this inner voice. So the intuition may suggest opportunity B. So opportunity A, B, C, it suggests opportunity B. That one feels right. Now you may ask the inner voice, you may say, what is it about opportunity B? And then an exploratory conversation appears in mind, providing vivid clarity. Now, through the practice of doing this again and again and again over the years, I find that it is easier for me to discern and then have vivid clarity, and we can say not be swayed by opinions, because it is illusory to suggest that this world is trying to persuade you, convince you otherwise. You are the only one that could suggest what this world appears to do. This is a very important point. I came to this realization as a result of applying this information over the years. For example, right now as I'm communicating with you, you can only suggest what this means to you. You are the one imagining what I'm saying and how it relates to you. And in relation to anything that has been communicated here in this book or any book, you can check in with yourself and say, what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing for me to do? Now, the interesting thing about intuition and the still small voice or the inner voice is I find that it is always in harmony with all. Fascinating. I've done a lot of business projects, and then over the years, through the practice of mind purification, exactly like we're talking about, which is through meditation and also not identifying with illusory thoughts so that we can be as we are, as a result of being as I am, what I notice is relationships automatically flow. Conversations automatically flow. And I don't overthink whether I should do something or not do something. It just happens. I trust you're noticing it. It just happens is a great way of explaining it. Now, I relate that over to what he mentioned. Meditation is the process of reuniting the soul with the infinite spirit. So once the illusions of separation are dissolved in mind, that suggests separation from infinite spirit, what happens is I automatically imagine everyone loving me. I automatically imagine things happen to be in my favor. And I notice that relationships, environments, circumstance, information appear to be more so in harmony with me as I am in harmony with all, which is fascinating because in the earlier stages, it didn't appear that way. It appeared as conflict. It appeared as forcing myself, stressing myself out. And through the journey of mind purification, those illusions began to dissolve more and more so. So meditation, and there are many different kinds of meditation practices. The meditation that I do, as mentioned, is the Vipassanā meditation. Meditation has been very helpful for me so that I can discern and then also clear out the mental chatter. I take the opportunities each moment they present themselves to not identify with what the Bible refers to as the old man thinking. I put off the former conversations, which in the Bible it says belongs to the old man. So it is not you. As mentioned, who you are is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Inevitably, you realize this. And when I say you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, let's relate it to what he mentioned, and not in this book, but he had said it. Self-realization is the knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul. So knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul that you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you realize the self as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. That is your true nature. That is who you truly are. And you actualize it as wonderful life experiences. So I love the integration that Paramahansa Yogananda had encouraged all throughout his teachings. He said you can live your ideal life physically and actually contribute to the well-being of this world. He was able to do it. He was able to inspire many people to do it as he was an embodiment of it. Now, here's the interesting thing. I find that there's no limit to the degree we can be as we are. Have you found a limit to the degree of being as you are? We can always be more authentic. Over the years, what I have noticed through applying this information is that I became more and more as I am. Now, what do I mean by that? And what does that practically play out as? Well, it plays out as, for example, being really comfortable in relationships, authentically communicating what I desire without needing approval, validation for the fact that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, because it's an illusion to seek for proof or validation or confirmation of being love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment when that is who you are. So what ends up happening then is you flow in conversations. Now in business, what happens is you automatically choose what is the deals to move forward with that are true and authentic for you to build a successful business, for example, and also it happens to be in harmony with all. And there may be opportunities to purify the mind, and those opportunities are presented at any moment. There's mental chatter appearing in mind that seems to suggest otherwise from intuition. So intuition is the compass. Speaking of which, I like how Florence Scovel Shinn said it one time. She said, prayer is you telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning to you. So you are always guided from within. It might not appear in a person's mind that way due to mental chatter. It's just mental chatter that is generating the noise of opinions. They are from past beliefs. And maybe those past beliefs were helpful at a particular point, but maybe not so much right now. So in those moments, practically speaking, what I learned from this book and also other meditation practices, including, as mentioned, Vipassanā, is I could take a deep breath and breathe out, allow the emotions to be released, not identify with the illusory thoughts, accept myself the way I am, accept reality the way it is, surrender illusions of control to God, and then what happens is intuition provides the clear insight. And also, I found, as mentioned, intuition can provide the clear insight as to what to do, while intuition may suggest do nothing. Now, a person might think, well, you're building a business. You must do something. Well, at times I found that intuition actually said, do nothing. Do nothing. Similar to collect yourself, be calm. And what I found, which is very fascinating, I trust you're experiencing this as well, is things seem to change on their own. People appear to change, environments appear to change on their own. That is the power of God. And rather than trying to control the infinite power of infinite spirit, I let it be. So I talk about this all throughout my videos. I personally exclusively listen to intuition and not the mental chatter. This actualizes, as mentioned, as confident being, harmonious relationships, knowing what to do, what not to do. And this is realized through this practice. You actually experiences what could sound, if a person is identified with particular beliefs that suggest, no, this is not possible, what could sound as very nebulous, or how could this be true, that the answers are within you, it's actually experienced as you meditate, after the meditations, during those moments where you live the meditation practice. You actually realize experientially that the kingdom of heaven is within you. So this book, very exploratory. He shares his stories. He shares his examples. He shares what he had learned from his various teachers. And he shares insights and perspectives. The way it is written is very transformative. So I have spoken to many people. As mentioned, my ex-girlfriend as well was a member of Self-Realization Fellowship. They have mentioned to me that when they read Autobiography of the Yogi, a lot of changes happen in their life just by reading the book. So when reading the book, it is important to put the dichotomous beliefs aside. One could say, have an open mind and read it from your heart. We speak a lot about heart-brain coherence or heart-mind coherence. The mental chatter in mind generates the illusion of the heart and mind not being in harmony. And when reading this book, if we allow ourselves to have a curious mind, be open, and explore a person's life experiences, their stories, I can assure you shifts happen. So personally, I recommend reading this book when you travel. This is a great travel companion. You may listen to an audiobook version of the book when you're in flight or out and about while you travel. Why I like that and recommend that personally is we may have a lot of associations with the particular environment that we're in where we feel constricted, which again is an illusion. So I find something when it comes to travel, it allows for space so that you could be more receptive. And essentially, we're receiving the truth. So we're being receptive to authenticity. We're allowing ourselves to be receptive to authentic being. We trust. This is how we build a relationship with the inner voice and intuition. This is how we practice discernment. We can know clearly what in mind is illusory thinking and what is intuition. So that's one of my recommendations. Although it can be done in your particular environment right now. You don't have to travel. As mentioned, the core of it is open-mindedness, allowing the heart to resonate with the aspects, because he is speaking from the heart in there. That's what I noticed. And what happens is you resonate with various aspects of the book, and then it starts to purify the mind. And this, what we're talking about here, makes practical sense. So intuition then is the guidance that appears, that guides each one of us to be as we are, and it also happens to be in harmony with all. I can say this with conviction now, with certainty now, as I have been practicing it over the years. Let's explore this part here. Intuition is soul guidance appearing naturally in man during those instances when his mind is calm. Nearly everyone has had the experience of an inexplicably correct hunch or has transferred his thoughts effectively to another person. As mentioned, if we see everyone in harmony with us, what I have noticed as well is thought transmission, or so it appears that way. I start to think in a loving, harmonious, love-based, bliss-based, happiness-based, peace-based, fulfillment-based. I notice that people reflect those thoughts. Their true nature is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So they gladly accept their authentic way of being. And what it plays out as is harmonious relationships, harmonious theater, harmonious businesses. He says the human mind, free from the static of restlessness, can perform Through this antenna of intuition, all the functions of complicated radio mechanisms, sending and receiving thoughts and tuning out undesirable ones. This is very much related to the book that started this whole journey for me back in 2004, which is Think and Grow Rich. He mentioned something like that in there. Maybe he read this book, but there are many books that suggest the same thing, that point to the same thing, which from personal experience and through our conversation today, I trust you are seeing more so and experiencing more so. So it is helpful then to keep the mind free from cluttering thoughts that suggest illusions of separation. And a great way to do this is to practice meditation. And also, what I recommend is to not identify with illusory thoughts of separation. Living the meditation practice. If these kinds of illusory thoughts appear in your mind, simply don't identify with them. If there's confusion, mental chatter, seeming contradiction, from which mental arguments happen, which can manifest as arguments with people, that is completely unnecessary, as intuition provides clear, vivid, accurate guidance. So I speak a lot about being in flow. And by the way, Yogananda, Ananda is a Sanskrit word for bliss. And anandamide is the neurotransmitter that is released while you're in flow. Anandamide reconciles divergent thinking and convergent thinking, as we discussed in the video that I released Thursday. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. Divergent thinking is seeing things from many different perspectives, which can be very helpful. Convergent thinking is going with well-established solutions that have been proven in equation, which can be helpful as well. One way is not better than another way. I may do this, I may do that, or as mentioned, I may do nothing and things work out. Or I may do a variation of this with a combination of that, or a variation of this and a combination of that, and things work out. All of that happens while you're in flow, being as you are. So what we find then, practically speaking, in conversations, in discussions, is we find the harmony point. Let's say a person says, this is the way to do things, and the other person says, that is the way to do things. I don't have a bias of one way being better than another. I can be still and release that bias in the moment. And then what happens is I may do it this way, or I may do it that way, or I may do none of those. And then what can end up happening is I end up doing a variation of this way plus that way, or a way that's totally different, because intuition provides that. So that is what Steve Jobs had mentioned in his commencement speech of not letting the noise of opinions drown out your own inner voice. This opinion I value, this opinion I value, yet ultimately I go within and check in with myself and choose what is the intuitive yes. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, being as I am self-realized, I acknowledge my true way of being and live authentically from the sure foundation of intuition, which guides the way to actualizing, materializing myself in form to be in harmonious relationship with all people, environment, circumstance, and information. This continues to increase more so each day with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive, to prove an equation that I am now in possession of the kingdom of God, manifesting as thy will be done, heaven on earth, appearing more and more so each moment with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive.